What is the scariest thing you've ever seen while driving at night? A dead, butchered horse laying in the road. Someone had completely skinned and butchered a horse, took the choice pieces of meat, and just dumped it on the highway. I almost crashed into it. WTF. One night on a long drive, this guy pulled up alongside me, and when I glanced over I noticed he had his pants down and was watching me masturbate. 3 AM on a lonely road and I was the passenger. An old man only wearing a bra, panties and high heels was casually walking down the road. My friend who was driving didn't believe me and went back around. Sure enough, he saw him and we were like WTF. Go to pay the bills somehow. Work at 4:30 AM and seeing a cyclist with his head split open and brains on the road. My friend and I were walking home at about 2 AM one night about 15 years ago. We see this car going in the opposite direction, clearly going way past the speed limit. As he's passing us, we see him go up on the curb and hit someone walking on the opposite sidewalk, decapitating them. This was before we had cell phones and everything was closed because it was such a tiny town. We ran as fast as we could to the nearest house, about 15-20 minutes away, and banged on their door until they opened it so we could call the cops. I still see it in my sleep sometimes. I was driving home late one night and was driving on a dark stretch of the highway. Suddenly a body was in front of me. I tried to swerve out of the way but it was too late. My bumper was hanging on the ground. The guy died. And I went to a nearby gas station not knowing what to do, was 18. When the tow truck pulled my car up onto it, there were a bunch of blood and guts on the bottom. I couldn't get that image out of my head. Apparently a drunk driver with 5 DWIs had hit a guy on the motorcycle prior. For years after I had serious depression and thought about it every night before sleep. A closed Waffle House. This is by far the scariest reply on this thread. A closed Waffle House signifies the end of times. Someone I knew locally came across a Jeep that had just crashed into the ditch on a highway at night, flipped on its top, wheels still turning kind of thing. He was the first on scene, so called 911 and ran down into the ditch. The driver, who was badly mangled, had been tossed from the car and was dying. This guy held him and the driver died in his arms. The weirdest part of it all was that he found out the next day that it was his cousin, but he hadn't been able to recognize him. Driving down a 2-lane divided highway. I came up to a couple semis and went into the left lane to pass. I did a shoulder check to get back into the right lane when I saw headlights in front of me. In my lane. The car was going the wrong way. I managed to swerve into the ditch, felt like I was mere centimeters from death. Thought my wife's scream would be the last thing I ever hear. And I never want to hear it again. The semis I passed all pulled to the shoulder to come check on us. Didn't see the car anywhere. I think they just kept going. Had to pull into a gas station after and collect myself. Actually very nice of those semis to check on you guys. Truckers are either the nicest people on the road or the biggest serial killer assholes. No in between. I was following a grey Toyota Tundra in a massive blizzard through Montana on McDonald Pass. He was going pretty quick most of the way but must have been unfamiliar with how steep the final few miles are. He got away from me as I slowed down to about 35. Not 5 minutes later I passed his tire marks in the fresh snow that went off the side of the mountain. Pulled over and looked down to see his truck upside down and on fire about 300 yards down. Called 911. He didn't die but was burnt up pretty bad. Sad and scary, and don't go 50 in the snow just because you have a truck or 4WD. An asshole overtaking a petrol tanker around a blind corner, coming my way. Scared the shit out of me. Frogs. Everywhere. Like hundreds of frogs all over the road. Damn it Moses. Damn it Kermit. A lonely abandoned shack with a bunch of arrows pointing to it, saying come in. I slammed the brakes once because I saw deer in my peripheral vision. Upon closer inspection, it was a mounted deer head on a stick in the middle of the woods. Slammed the gas after I realized that Dad was driving at night, and I was looking out the window and saw 2 red pinpricks in the cornfield, and it followed us. I told my dad about it and he said, in the most calm, casual tone for this situation, "Those are cornfield demons. Stay in the car and you'll be okay." Cue me freaking the hell out when he got out of the car not too long after to check a tire before getting back in. I'm still not sure if that was an actual thing or if he was using a situation to his advantage to teach me to not do anything stupid like that at night. Either ways, it worked, and I still have no idea what those 2 pinpricks were. Your dad is epic. I was fetching someone from his workplace. Had to go through some fields, and some parts of the road were dark. I saw a thin, long object, wiggling at an upright position at the side of the road in front of me. Totally freaked me out. I thought I was finally experiencing something extraordinary. As I got closer I realized it was a tail of a cow. It must have escaped from some field and was hanging around at the side of the road. The cow itself was black, the tail slightly lighter in color. That's why I only saw the tail moving first without seeing the whole cow first. I don't know if this is really scary, but it definitely freaked me out for a moment. Driving home from grad lab for a couple hours of sleep, about 4 in the morning, longish, time-sensitive experiment, not dawn yet, still pitch black. Turn a corner, and suddenly, someone runs into the street right in front of my car and stops. I stop. I wait. They don't move. Cautiously, I try to drive around. They scream, run up and slam their hands on the hood of my car. With them so close, I realize they are totally naked and filthy. They stare at me for a moment, then proceeds to run in wide circles, kinda listing to one side than the other, in front of my car. After about 2 minutes of this, he lists hard to one side, far enough I felt safe quickly driving around them, very wide, on the other side that was now open. Meth, man. I got off on my exit, and the whole road was covered in blood. I put on my brights and saw a bisected body of a large animal. It just made me so sad. This is like a weekly occurrence on MI highways. Killer clown on the side of a deserted country road during the 2016 clonepocalypse. I think I cried. I had just finished driving for Uber and was driving down the access road to my home around 3 AM when I saw a body lying completely lifeless next to one of those motorized scooters. I pulled over and flagged down his buddies who were drunk and kept going without realizing their friend was lying on the ground. Ambulance arrived and took the kid away, but I never came to find out if he made it. FCK those scooters, man. I was driving on the expressway around 2 AM and a semi hit a car and it went into the median. The car basically folded into itself and was beyond smashed. I can't imagine that person survived. It was incredibly sad and terrifying to see. I was driving on a near empty freeway at midnight when I saw a weird flickering light on the freeway. It was super dark and barely any lights besides headlights, so I slowed down a bit and merged a lane over. As I passed I got a good look and it was a car absolutely destroyed and on fire. I was a little shocked and ended up driving a bit past it before I really saw what it was, and by the time I thought about pulling over it was already far behind me and a cop sped past me on the other side, so I knew they were aware of what happened. Driving down country highways late at night and seeing coyotes just standing on the side of the road can be pretty unnerving. A fucking owl standing on the corpse of a large buck in the mountains at 3:05 AM. All you see as you approach are 2 glowing red orbs, Then slowly becomes huge dark form standing on the edge of the road with eyes of fire. Then you get close enough and this massive f***ing owl just gives you the death stare as you go past. You realize it was just a large ass owl standing on the remains of fresh roadkill. Freaked me out for the rest of the dark part of the drive. When I first started learning to drive I was working for my dad, and one day after work he asked if I wanted to drive home. I was like alright. So I got on the highway headed for home, and while driving, I looked in the rear view and a guy on a crockett was coming up behind me. I thought nothing of it, I was sure he would pass or slow down. I look ahead again and a few moments later I hear this sound, like metal scraping against the ground. I look around and then look back into the rear view, and the bike was on its side, spinning down the highway, and behind it I could see the biker on his back, legs and arms flailing kind of like a baby on its back in a crib. Then I watched as he disappeared under the vehicle behind him. I was so freaked out driving after that I didn't want to drive for weeks following the incident. Then eventually got over it. Still I can see the guy in my mind just sliding along the ground flailing about then being swallowed under another car. Holy shit. A body in the ditch. Thought it was a deer as I approached and then my brain was like deer don't wear boots. I was shaking as I did the U-turn to make sure the person was alive. They were, just drunk and some people stopped as well and emergency was called. I was so shaken up by it. A 6-foot kangaroo standing in the middle of a pitch black road at 3 AM in the morning, missed it by a bee's dick. My story is similar. I was driving along the highway at night and in the right hand lane was a giant f***ing moose crossing the highway. He was taller than my car and had some huge f***ing antlers. That's definitely a moose, big and antlery. Night shift. Driving home. Child right in the middle of the street. Noped out of there because I watched those car hijacks. Took twice as long to get home though. Edit. I did call the cops and they caught the guys mid-act. Husband, wife and a child. Only reason I was informed by this is because my police bud. A lady tried to use my truck to commit suicide. I was going 40 and she jumped towards my truck. It happened so fast I couldn't stop in time and her head smashed out my driver's side window. Scared the shit out of me. At first I didn't know that I hit a person until I looked back and saw her body in the road. She didn't die that day, but as soon as she got out of the hospital, she went back and did the same thing. This time it was a semi-truck and she didn't make it. Super sad story. I was a very young woman driving home after clubbing, about 2 AM through Hollywood. I was pulling up to a stop sign on Kahunga, about 3 blocks from Hollywood Boulevard, when a bunch of guys begin to casually stroll onto the crosswalk, coming from both sides. I hit the gas and ran the stop sign without even thinking. They cursed and ran after me, but those boys were ready to jack me. My instincts took over before I even realized what was happening. Yo, that is some serious shit.